This meeting come to order. Today is Tuesday, March 14th, 2017. This is a voting meeting of the Prescott City Council. Welcome, everybody. Looks like we got kind of sparse attendance today, but appreciate everybody that took time out to come and listen to some of the deliberations today. Mayor Pro Tem, do you have any announcements?
I'd like to acknowledge our perennial attendee, Ed Perry, and his granddaughter. Do we have a new attendee, Ed?
What was that again, sir?
It's okay.
It was very simple, Ed. Number one, we appreciate you being here, and thank you for bringing our next generation of perennial attendee. I hope that's why you brought your granddaughter, is to influence her decisions on attending city council meetings on a regular basis.
Well, my real reason, of course, is she was a master teacher down in Phoenix, and I wanted her to be sure to impart to all those coming generations that this is the only form of, as one of your gentlemen here said, of pure government left in the United States.
Thank you for your wisdom, Ed.
Okay, our invocation today will be by Rabbi Adele Plotkin of Beth Torah, and I'll lead the Pledge of Allegiance.
So I guess all those smiling faces are because of the sparse attendance. Oh, now you can hear me. Honorable Mayor Oberg, council members and staff, community members and friends, as sparse as you may be. As we gather here today to address the business of governing our community, we recognize that the challenges we face are constantly changing. As individuals, we sometimes face frustrations in managing our own budgets. How much more complicated it must be with the governmental balancing acts, especially since topics to be addressed by this body are also in constant flux. No doubt, the infrastructure challenges are a major part of this balancing act, so it is welcome to see that there are a few approval items to be moved on today for roads, airport, and so forth. Therefore, we pray that you, our leaders, will be blessed with wisdom and creativity to successfully address these ever-changing challenges. May you be mindful to protect with compassion and respect the people you serve and the environment we all live in with deep caring for all. May you also see your way to be mindful of the resources at hand which need to be protected so that they are available for use not only by us now, but also by future generations. In affirmation of these fervent prayers, let each of us, in his or her own way, now affirm, so may it be.
Thank you, Rabbi. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mayor Oberg.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Lamerson.
Here.
Councilman Blair.
Yes.
Councilman Lozelle.
Here.
Councilwoman Orr.
Here.
Councilman Shiska.
Here.
Councilwoman Wilcox.
Here.
All present.
City Manager, do we have any announcements?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Presentation.
Update on NAU Prescott Valley campus by Richard Heath.
Good afternoon. I think the beautiful weather certainly has some indication of your attendance here today, or some reflection on it. So I want to thank the staff and also the council and the mayor for giving me the opportunity just to give a very brief update on the NAU Prescott Valley campus. I've been out giving presentations to all the municipal bodies throughout Yavapai County. So just to get an update and get some feedback and input from you. I did leave my business cards over here on the side, so if you want to contact me later. My email's there as well as my phone number. So I've been in this position about 5 months. Previously I worked for GPrep, and I'm currently the executive director and the administrative lead for the Prescott Valley campus. So I have a program, and I teach as well as oversee the day-to-day operations of the campus. If you didn't know, just a little historical context, the campus opened in 2010, and it was really directed by the legislature to the 3 state universities to open regional campuses. And NAU partnered with Yavapai College back then and opened the campus in 2010 at its current location, which is out there by the Prescott Valley Library and the Town Hall, that complex right there. The idea behind our campus is it's very affordable, so it's a lot less cost, in addition to like the other 4-year campuses. We have very flexible degree program options, so we offer a lot of our classes on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and the evenings, so those people that are working can come to our campus and take classes. We also have a lot of non-traditional students. We have a student body that ranges from 17 to 62, and about 55% of our students are in their upper 20s. So not all of them are fresh out of one of the high schools. A lot of them do return from varying places in their world, military. Maybe they worked for a while, maybe they stayed at home, took care of family. Now they want to come back and pursue their education. So we have, again, very flexible options for our classes. We offer 4 different degree programs on our campus: Applied Human Behavior, Community Development and Sustainability, that's my program that I oversee, Entrepreneurship, and Service Management and Leadership. So individuals coming to our campus can get a degree within about a 3-year time frame. That is, if they do dual enrollment or concurrent enrollment with Yavapai College or another institution. A lot of our students have and continue to come from Yavapai College, who have a very strong relationship with the college. We believe that if individuals can come in, get through a certificate, get through an associate's degree, then they can move on to one of our 4 bachelor degree programs that we offer on our campus. One of the areas that I focused on during my interview process was making sure that individuals that are going to on our campus have opportunities to experience the work world through either internships, through job shadowing, through short-term projects. So I'm always reaching out to municipalities, to private businesses, other organizations, to see if they'd like to take a student from one of our 4 programs and give them some life experience. One of the things that I talked about during the interview process was the fact that when I was an undergrad and a master's degree student, back then I was sold a degree. So the day after my graduation as an undergrad, as a graduate student, I didn't really know what to do with myself. Of course, the internet wasn't around then. You couldn't go on Indeed and find jobs. You really had to know people. You really had to network. That's when the days when you actually wrote a letter to somebody and asked for a job, and you typed out your resume and sent it and hoped and prayed that somebody would come back and give you some, with some positive feedback. So I want to make sure that the individuals in our school, while they're in classes, have that opportunity to go out into the communities and get some work experience. Connections are really important. That work experience is very important. And probably the end goal is I want to make sure those students stay here. A lot of them are from Yavapai County. We want them to stay here. Having come from an economic development work field, and I worked in it for a number of years, we know how important workforce is, especially skilled workforce. I know when talking to business development consultants, they're always looking on their list is how many 4-year institutions are there in your community. And we can boast that we have one in ours, and we're going to look to grow it in the future. The other area that we opened just recently, and maybe if you're a lumberjack alumni, we do have a welcome center that just opened last August. That is down in the entertainment district of Prescott Valley, right by Harkins Theater. So individuals can go there and get NAU merchandise, as well as information on the entire university, not just our campus alone. So we get a lot of foot traffic that come through. We try to make sure that we're answering their questions, whether it be on scholarships, housing, degree programs, whatever the case may be. That's kind of our source of information, and that'll be our constant throughout. So you want to know a little bit about where we're going. So President Rita Chang is very committed to the greater Prescott area. She wants to make sure that the campus continues to grow to serve the population here. We're looking at adding a number of degree programs here with the emphasis on business. It could be on hospitality. We're looking at other areas that might be needed, especially at the master's degree level in management or public administration. Some of those classes can be offered face-to-face. Some of them are in a blended format, which could be online as well as in the classroom. And we're just trying to make sure that we meet the demands of our students. And a lot of that will come from our fellow institutions here in this area, as well as Yavapai College. One of the areas, too, is in my responsibility world, so to speak, is to get out and make sure that I'm building collaborations with municipalities, with businesses, with organizations. I'm always on the road doing mixers and breakfasts at the chamber events. Some of them are a little earlier than I want, but it's nice to get out and network and hear what people have to say. And to give some input, get some feedback on the university, and also how can we be, how can we better serve you in your respective institutions, whether municipalities, nonprofit organizations, your business community, and so forth. One of the initiatives that are undergoing right now is we're going into a one NAU format. You may remember over the years that when Prescott Valley campus was put online, it became NAU Yavapai. Well, with President Chang, she's moving everything into centralized one NAU. That means we'll have all of our outreach, admissions, academic advising, IT, everything will be centralized at the main campus with support services given to more of the regional campuses. So that was one of the ideas she had in mind when she developed the Welcome Center, is that's going to be our message center, so to speak, where people can come in and get information and learn about all the institutions throughout the state and what NAU has to offer. One of the other areas that I focused on during my interview process is to make sure that we had really a strong alumni chapter here in the greater Prescott area. I've heard numbers that there are 5,000 NAU alum in Yavapai County. 2,400 of them live in the greater Prescott area. So we want to make sure that we're engaging them. And I came from two states where there were the big state schools dominated on the alumni side, University of Wisconsin-Madison and Ohio State University. They dominated the landscape when it came to alumni. They were everywhere. So if you wanted a job and you were walking down the street with a OU or a Wisconsin hat on, somebody would embrace you right away. And those of you that are NAU grads or U of A or ASU, you know what that network is like and how important it is. I want to engage the 2,400 people on this side of the mountain, the 5,000 total, to make sure that we're a strong entity here on a lot of different fronts. The community involvement, support of the institution, support of the students, support of academic programs, support of our business community, which we know, again, how important labor force is to making sure our business community is strong and vibrant and very diverse. So those are really the two things, the alumni as well as the internships are two of my areas that I really want to focus on. The university overall just kind of runs itself with a number of individuals in place that make a lot bigger decisions than I do. So at the grassroots level, I want to make sure that the alumni and the internships are in place for our students. So with that, does anybody have any questions, comments, thoughts, ideas?
Question, comments from the council? Well, thank you for everything that NAU does for the community, and just like Embry-Riddle and the colleges, we consider NAU a real asset for the region.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming in and giving us your insight on your organization.
Okay. And I look forward to coming back sometime in the future just to give another short update with some good news on our campus expansion. So thank you very much, and have a nice meeting. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda.
Consent agenda, item A, approval of minutes for the city council meetings held on February 21st, 24th, and 28th, 2017. Item B, award of city contract number 2017-264 to Harry and Horn LLP for the independent financial statement audit for fiscal years 2017, 18, and 19 for the city and the Hacienda Community Facilities Districts in the amount of $115,405 over the 3-year period. Item C, approval of city contract number 2017-270 with Kronos for public safety software upgrade in the amount not to exceed $11,424.57 using Mojave County, Arizona contract pricing. Item D, approval of city contract number 2017-271 with ESRI Incorporated for a 3-year GIS enterprise licensing agreement in amount not to exceed $38,500 per year. Item E, approval to perform night work at the intersection of West Willis Street and North Cortez Street associated with the Willis and Cortez Streets intersection repair project, Sunday through Thursday, 8 p.m. to 6 a.m., April through July 2017. Item F, approval to purchase a Hoffman heavy-duty alignment machine from O'Reilly Auto Parts utilizing the National Cooperative Purchasing Alliance contract in the amount of $53,416.41. Item G, approval of an infrastructure settlement agreement with the Yavapai Prescott Indian Tribe. Item H, approval of RP 16-009 revision of plat for Touchmark at the Ranch Pad to replace 24 multifamily units in 6 fourplex buildings and 11 single-family lots and plat a new 26-foot private road for access to the Grand Lodge. And item I, adoption of resolution number 4378-1587 establishing an airport advisory committee as a standing committee.
Okay, we've been going 6 ways to Sunday today, and I didn't have a chance to get around and ask everybody if they wanted to pull anything from the agenda for further discussion. If not, do I have a motion?
Mayor,
Go ahead.
I move to approve consent agenda items 8A through 8I.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second vote, please.
Passes unanimously.
Special events?
Mayor and Council, on today's liquor license special event agenda, there are 3 special event liquor license applications. Although item 9A3, the Mountain Artists Guild Arts and Crafts Show, the applicant has asked that we continue that item till April 11th because they want to make some changes to their application. So the 2 requests for a Series 15 special event liquor license are a request by the Yavapai Trails Association and a request by Prescott Area Celtic Society. The applications have been determined to be in compliance with city requirements and are being recommended for approval. So an appropriate motion, if you choose, would be to forward special event liquor licenses numbers 9A1 and 9A2 to the Arizona Department of Liquor.
Mayor, motion?
Mayor, I move to approve special liquor license, event license 9A1 through 9A2.
Second. Yeah, motion and second vote, please.
Passes unanimously.
Okay, we'll move on to the regular agenda.
Item A, legislative update.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Tyler Goodman from the City Manager's Office. I bear a lot better news this time around than my last update, and not much has been introduced in the legislature. So I kind of want to review some of those things that were of concern last time, tell you where they're at, and then maybe just a few other things. The first that I want to talk about was the Bill HB 2179, which had to do with intergov agreements, which would have made the city have a limit on intergov agreements to 8 years and have to review those every 8 years. Well, that's dead, so that's not going anywhere. That's good news. The next one was the big one, construction sales tax. This is also, it appears to be dead this year. It has not gotten out of the House. It hasn't even reached a vote on the floor, because they know that there aren't the votes for it. So it's probably not going anywhere this year. Also good news. The next one would be GPLET reform, government property lease excise tax, which is that economic development incentive tool that cities can use. It gives the 8-year abatement, tax abatement, as well as some other things. I sent an email to the Mayor and Council a few weeks back saying that there was an amendment which basically nullified any negative effect that it would have had. We still have one minor concern on it, because prior to this bill, cities were able to own the underlying property, the land, for up to 25 years. Well, because of this bill, it would have to be conveyed along with the property after the 8 years. So that's one of the minor things, but the league is now in support of this bill. That's not a big enough deterrent for them to keep pushing against it. So I wanted to get your feedback on what you think about that, if you want to continue being opposed or go neutral. We can talk to Barry about it. Just wanted to get your feedback.
Councilwoman Wilcox.
I don't have an objection to the conveyance after 8 years, as long as we can show that there's a public benefit and we're getting an equivalent value in return. That's why we need an economic policy. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. The next one on the list would be SB 1063, which is Senator Lesko's bill. She's the one who worked on PSPRS reform last year. Good news on this, I gave you in my update last time that the PSPRS board decided not to pool larger cities and smaller cities separately. Well, this bill actually does that exactly. What it does is it will tier or pool if you're 251 or more members in PSPRS in the city, then you will continue as normal. So those larger cities will not be pooled together, risk pooled together starting July 1 going forward. But if you have 250 or less, which we do in the city of Prescott, much less than that, then you will be risk pooled for those uncontrollable risks.
So those are active members currently in positions, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. So good news on that.
So is this tier 3?
It is tier 3
Okay, so
going
not just
forward.
active, it's not, is it tier 1 and 2? No, it's
No,
just
tier
tier
3
3.
prospectively.
Okay. All right, that's
Right.
what I would assume, but I
Yeah.
just want to make sure.
Yes. Okay. The next one, I talked last time about the SB 1329, which is fire flow requirements. This would have, it's just bad policy. The one where, let me get my notes straight on this one because I don't want to. So this would apply, the city code for fire protection would not apply to the single family residential of a half acre or greater. Do you remember that one where we're the water provider, and if we don't do the 1,000 gallons per minute, then they could decide, okay, well then you don't need to put in the infrastructure for the development. Well, there was an amendment to it which basically got rid of that, but it says that we can provide alternative methods of delivery. If the developer doesn't like what we're doing or if it's overly burdensome, they can file to get a waiver, which would go to the city. The city could accept or deny. If we deny and they appeal, it goes to the governing body of the city. So that is the amendment. It's still, we see it as still bad policy, talking to Chief Light about this. But it's not as bad as it was. So going forward, we're still opposing it. And if you have any comments or concerns on that, please let me know. Okay.
Keep going.
The next one would be HB 2495, the consolidated election dates. This is the TPT. You'd have to do it in even numbered years in the fall. Working with Barry, we did get that amendment to where it would only be in effect December 31st and onward. It will not affect the PSPRS ballot measure that the city currently has, as well as the fact that this has already been challenged, something similar when they wanted to regulate the election of elected officials to even numbered years. Charter cities went out legally on that. It's believed that if this was to pass through, it would die legally as well, and that we'd still maintain that ability to run our own elections. So not too big of a concern, but we're keeping an eye on it as well.
So Tyler, is that the league has taken a stand against that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the one that's on the radar, really.
It's still moving, is what you're saying?
It's still moving. Mm-hmm. It is, but again, it's not believed that it could hold up in court, even if it did get through, because there's already precedent against it. So, and it won't affect our current ballot measure.
Just thinking in the future.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
bad bill.
that's still on our active list. The next one was brought to our attention by Chief Black. It's about civil forfeiture. It's HB 2477. And this one, what it essentially does, the biggest change would change the burden of proof to a preponderance of evidence to clear and convincing evidence in order to seize those civil assets. So it would make it more difficult to do that. And from just what I've gathered up on the bill itself, it's kind of a step forward for the sponsor rather than going the full 9 yards on this, to make it more stringent to be where you could only seize those assets if there was a criminal conviction. So this bill, what it does, it allows for a lot of collection of data. It changes that as well as some other administrative things. basically to put it in place so that they can move forward in future legislative sessions to make it harder for civil asset forfeiture. So I wanted to make you aware of that as well. Are there any questions on that one or concerns?
I'd like to hear Chief Black's opinion of it.
Sure.
Mayor, Councilwoman Wilcox, this is not new except that it is progressing. There have been discussions nationally and within the state about civil asset forfeiture for many, many years. There have been introduction of additional reporting responsibilities in recent years. Yavapai County Attorney Sheila Polk is really representing our interests on this, since we are part of a regional task force for drug enforcement. They handle all of our asset forfeiture, so I'm trusting her to represent the city as well as the county on this issue. Is that?
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, just two more. The next one would be, it's actually two bills. Both came from the House. It has to do with firefighters' workers' comp, and one has to do with heart-related disease, and the other is cancer. And so with the heart-related disease bill, there was an amendment to essentially it restricts the coverage to incidences within 24 hours of a known work event. The league has been working on this with them because they would really like to see the scientific evidence that correlates to this, whether these work-related events do cause the actual disease itself. So that has occurred with the heart disease bill. The other one has to do with cancer. The league's working on this one, keeping us aware of it. It covers quite a few. I won't read you everything, but it covers quite a few if it does pass. So it's something on the radar, and that they're continuing to work on those folks with. So something to keep you aware of.
Yeah, I guess the problem I have with that one is it's kind of like, in the military, after you go to the VA, you have to prove that you had you were in positions where you got wounded, or you had some kind of illness or something like that. You had to go back and show the evidence of that. And I understand on this bill, basically the individual doesn't have to prove anything. And,
right.
It's all on workman's comp to prove that the person didn't have some kind of exposure, which, I think is probably, to me, just a little bit a stretch too far. And I think they're working right now to see if they can't resolve that, aren't they?
They are. That's
Okay.
correct. Yeah.
And I believe this is Senator Phan's bill out of the Senate originally and then went to the House.
I'm not aware of that, but it could be. Yeah.
And she's worked hard on that, yeah.
Is that 1407, Billy?
I'm not sure of the
No.
number, but I know it started with Senator Phan in the Senate.
I believe that's a different one, actually, Councilwoman. I believe, I just looked at that the other day. Similar issues, workers' comp, but I believe this is a separate
Okay.
bill from that. Yeah, but I can get you the
Okay.
details on that. Last but not least, the state budget. So the governor has a proposal in the budget, and this is not official. It hasn't even hit legislative discussion yet, but the league is very aware. So what the proposition is to allow universities, state universities, to avoid paying their share of TPT, which would affect the shared revenue formula and decrease the revenue going to cities. So again, they believe this is bad precedent as well. Barry, myself, and other members will be meeting at the league offices this week to talk about it, to get some more information and to kind of figure out where it's going forward and what we can do to help shift it. So I wanted to get your opinion as well, your direction, if you are good with us moving forward as opposed to this,
Oh, absolutely.
or otherwise.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. Tyler, I don't fully understand what you just said. All right. So the governor is looking for input through the leagues with regards to allowing university level operations not to pay the collections they did on PTP. Now, is there also a balancing act where you're going to decrease other general revenues directed through the state to the universities, or is this another proposed increase of dollars to go into the universities?
It is just that. It seems to be for education. It seems to be the purposes I have listed: bonding, general operations, and student aid is what that money would be used for.
So if the universities don't pay what they collect in PTP, what's the cause and effect consequences to, for example, municipalities, especially smaller municipalities that don't have the same exclusion, exemption, whichever you choose to call it, the potential cause and effect damages? You know, I can understand where this might sound like a good deal down in Maricopa County where they have a couple of million people, or Pima County, or whatever the case is, but when you're in an area such as Prescott, where we have a much smaller population, you know, the cause and effect consequence to the budget for us would be a whole lot more, it would appear to me.
Absolutely, and this would, the estimate is millions to cities around the state would be lost. So,
and this is Governor Ducey. All right, thank you.
Councilwoman Orr.
So Tyler, does this only apply to the universities at this point? But then it's kind of like the camel's nose is under the tent, and then you've got your colleges and...
Yeah. Yes, and that's the worry, is that this will spread.
Absolutely.
So it's bad precedent. Once again,
It
it's
is.
setting that stage.
So I would certainly say I hope we oppose it.
Yeah, that's kind of like most exemptions. Once it starts, it keeps going, and it keeps going. It's kind of like the moose that gets a muffin, you know? He wants another and then another. Okay, I got it.
And I can tell you the leagues of cities and towns realize that this is going to hurt the rural areas, and you know, it'll reduce our state shared revenue, and we can't afford that. And I agree with the Mayor Pro Tem. Maybe in Phoenix, you know, they can lose a little bit of that, but we can't afford to lose anything.
Great.
Tyler,
Councilwoman Wilcox.
oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me, Mayor.
The other side of the coin there is that the legislature cut funding for universities and completely cut it for community colleges. And so I think the governor is trying to find a way to get some funding back into the university system. Just think, you know, we need to think a little bit more holistically. Yes, it's a loss to rural communities, but what else can we keep coming into our basket in other ways?
Councilwoman Shitzka.
Thank you, Mayor. Does the governor understand the cause and effect of this? I mean, like you said, this was not going to nearly affect the large cities in Maricopa County like it's going to affect Prescott, Arizona. What is his underlying object in this whole thing?
That is a good question. I don't know, and the league still doesn't know. That's why we're going to meet to talk about what's really going on and strategy going forward. That is a good question, but it's part of the education funding, I believe.
Well, I think one of the problems that I see when I was down there talking to the league is that he feels this is a good way to get additional funding into the universities, but at the same time, you know, I don't know how long we've had this state TPT formula, but we've had it for many years. I think close to 70 years or something. And if we start to change that formula now, there's going to be other organizations that are going to come in and want to have, you know, their TPT held for them for their operations too, and then you know that's going to basically disrupt the entire TPT formula. And I just think it's wrongheaded, and I know that the league is definitely going to fight that, and I appreciate that. Councilwoman Orr.
Yes, and I agree, Councilwoman Wilcox, with what you're saying. I can see the other side of this. However, I see this as another overreach by state, and you know, against local control.
And that's all I have for today, unless you have questions.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Item B.
Item B, award of city contract number 2017-2632 to Fan Contracting Incorporated for the transfer station slab remediation and and scale replacement project in an amount not to exceed $435,420.
All right. Thank you, Dana. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my name is Steve Oroz, Public Works Department. Due to the, excuse me, due to the nature of the project, we have a very brief presentation along with our discussion about the proposed contract. The transfer station slab floor where most of the solid waste gets transferred is in poor condition, as you can see here. This is the edge of the floor where it goes into the containers. We did have a video that didn't quite transfer over. Originally, last year, we did put a project out to bid to repair the floor. It had a requirement to phase the construction to maintain the operation at the transfer station for this element of the facility. The bid came in, we only got one bid, and it was almost double the engineer's estimate and our available funding, so we put it on hold. During this process, we started looking at what we could do differently to make the project work. We looked at possibly closing the transfer station to do the work, which wasn't really a great idea because of the reduction in revenues. We looked at redirecting our solid waste vehicles to another facility, letting the public use the facility during the construction phase. We looked at the opposite, where we only serviced our vehicles that pick up the solid waste in the city and have all of the customers go somewhere else. All of those didn't quite work for a variety of reasons, public benefit, et cetera, et cetera. So what we did is we looked at a option of having a restricted operation during this period of time when the slab is getting rehabilitated. We also looked at combining the project with the scale replacements, because if there's a restricted operation going on, we have the ability to replace the scales, which is also needed at the same time. So what I'd like to do is introduce Will Black, our solid waste division manager, and he can go over the test that we did a week ago.
Thank you. Mayor and Council, the test we did a couple weeks ago allowed us to shut down one scale because they'll be replacing one scale at a time. We had to do a lot of estimating of weights to try to get the people through the scale so they wouldn't have to weigh out again. And the outreach that we did ahead of time, about 3 weeks out, we started passing out flyers to all the customers that visit the transfer station on a regular basis. We did a PSA, which the PSA got us an article in the local paper, and we got some local coverage on the radio. The test results, we had about 600 vehicles that moved through the site through Saturday. The test was a success. It's actually about 250 less vehicles than we normally get through the site, but it allowed us to determine that we could do this. Here's an example of how we load the material during the test. Instead of the material being pushed into the hole into the trailer, it's actually loaded from the outside, and you can see the excavator that's putting the material on the top left picture into the trailer. The right is the roll-off containers where the customers or the self-haul people load the material, and we are providing assistance to the customers because that's not normally what they do when they come to the transfer station. They just push it off onto the floor. We determined the test a success, and we're recommending that we stay open during construction with the limited access, but there's some things that we're recommending. We're recommending close one day during the week. This limits the staff that we need to be able to do the job. Thursday's our lightest day at the transfer station, so there's not going to be much of an impact to our customers. In addition, we'd like to close on Memorial Day. Memorial Day, we get about, last 3 years, we got about 80 customers through. We pay overtime for that day, and it just makes more sense not to be open at all. We'll continue to run our regular routes, and our trucks will be dumping there, but no one else. In addition, we'd like to change the hours at the transfer station from 8 to 3. Currently, we run 8 to 4. It takes us about 20 to 30 minutes to clean up right now. With loading from the outside, it takes us about an hour to an hour and a half. So this will limit the overtime that we're going to have with this. And at this time, we have residents that can dump in June the brush for free. We'd like to add Saturdays in May to that as well. This will help the line move smoother on Saturdays. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Steve.
Okay. Thank you, Will. Oop. All right. We did go through our normal bid process in late January, early February. We did receive 2 bids this time within the range that was available with funding. They were slightly above the engineer's estimate. The low bid amount of $435,420 is only $6,000 over what we bid last year for just the slab remediation, so we felt it was a good bid. We do have checked all the backgrounds on the low bid contractor, Fan Contracting. The schedule is to start the construction process in early April with notification that of the revised hours and operation at the facility. We'd like to suggest that these recommendations that Will went over be included with the award, or your concurrence that we can proceed with that. We would make the appropriate public outreach happen in coordination with our John Heine, who's our city PR person. And if there's any questions, Will or I are available to answer them.
Councilwoman Wilcox.
I was going to ask about appropriate public outreach.
Yes.
Exactly how are you going to let people know the station is closed on Thursdays and Memorial Day?
Will?
We're going to, Councilwoman Wilcox, Mayor, we're going to reach out to John Heine and talk about the methods we used the last time and see if there's anything we can do to improve from that. We use the PSAs, we use the flyers, we'll have signage outside, and we'll see about getting articles in the paper and see if we can get the same coverage on the radio.
Okay.
Councilman Blair.
Yes, Steve, I noticed in the background information, I think it may be a typo, but the notice to proceed, it says week of May 1st. Is that I think you just said it April 1st.
That is probably correct.
Okay.
We're looking to get it going as soon as possible. Again, we want to make sure we get the proper notification out to the public about the change of operation during construction, and that April-May timeframe during April will probably be the start of the actual construction, because there's some things a contractor will need to do ahead of the actual work. Submittals of equipment, getting the scales ordered, there is some lead time on that. So the notice to proceed doesn't necessarily mean boots on the ground that particular day. The process gets started.
What kind of longevity does that slab have, and have we thought about encasing it with metal so it didn't deteriorate so bad along those edges?
Will would probably have a better answer than I on that one.
Mayor, Councilmember Blair, there is metal on the edges of that already. It's, from what I understand, it's fallen off a few times. And I understand it looks like Swiss cheese if you take the metal off right now because it's detached so many times. And I'm not familiar with the details on the design, but I know that it's being designed and built stronger than what it is today, and it's actually lasted quite a bit longer than what was originally estimated.
What is the curing time then, once that's put down? How many weeks or months are you talking about keeping the transfer station limited?
We're looking at keeping that as minimal as possible. We are looking at the high early, which is high strength early cure time concrete. So we're looking at maybe a week or two for curing to get the facility operational. The biggest challenge with the operation at the transfer station is the scale replacement. And as soon as we can get the scales replaced, we can get to more normal operation more quickly. So that's going to be the first order of trying to get the scales completed as soon as possible so we can get that two-way operation moving.
Councilman Lozelle.
Thank you, Mayor. Steve, we were talking about signs and letting people know. Probably put them on the Pioneer Parkway as they're coming up, and don't, give them some early notice so they don't make the left or the right to get in there. Give them some notice that the place is closed, so they just keep going instead of pulling in and then having to figure out how to turn around if they got a trailer or something like that.
That's a very good idea. We can incorporate some of the changeable message signs that the city has and put them out on Pioneer Park. Pioneer Parkway to give some advance notice, because making a U-turn is
And then make that left
challenging.
back out of there is,
Correct.
yeah.
Yes.
Councilman Shiska.
Thank you, Mayor. Steve, can you relate to me again? I may have misunderstood, but you said that the engineer's estimate and the winning bid were relatively close together, but one is $357,000 and the other is $435,000. So did I miss something?
No. The process for these types of projects, with our experience with the engineer and their recommendation for other projects, the estimates do vary based on the contractor's means and methods and how they're going to approach the project. The engineers do their best with estimating, but these types of projects are very unique. And with the two bids coming in within a couple of $1,000s of each other, even though it was higher than the engineer's estimate, we felt that the bids were reasonable.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Any from the public? Do I have a motion?
Mayor, I move
go
to
ahead,
award city contract number 2017-263.
Second.
I got a second. Vote, please.
Passes unanimously.
Just one point of clarification, is the council okay with the recommendations that we made for modifying the operations at the transfer station during construction?
I didn't hear anybody saying no, so I think it's okay.
I just wanted to make sure we were clear. Thank you. Oh, we'd love to. Anytime.
Okay, item C.
Item C, adoption of ordinance number 5025-158. 1563, an ordinance of the Mayor and Council of the City of Prescott, Yavapai County, Arizona, amending Title 4, Chapter 4-6, Section 4-6-1, definitions, and 4-6-2, license required exemptions of the Prescott City Code.
Thank you, Dana. Mayor and Council, this is an item that Council looked at 2 weeks ago in relation to the licensing of long-term residential rentals. Before I get into that, though, I just wanted to go over the whole business license issue, since we had about 5 workshops on it, but it was about a year ago. Just wanted to reemphasize some of the points that we need to keep in mind on a business license. When the state, in its infinite wisdom, decided to take over administration of the tax licenses, the Prescott lost all that information. We can get the information from the Department of Revenue for tax administration, but we're unable to share that with any other department in the city. So if there's a change in ownership or a change in use or any of that in a business license, a sales tax license, we're unable to share that with community development or police or fire or any of those departments. So without a business license, we as a city do not have a list of businesses operating in the city that we can share with the public, with our other city departments, who to contact if there's an emergency at these places or anything like that, which is one of the reasons that we started looking at the business license again. In addition, we talked about the economic benefit of being able to tell people how many types of businesses we have in the community, as well as the public safety, which I just mentioned. And of course, then there's the compliance to make sure that people that are here doing business are paying tax, whether they have a structure that they're working out of or whether they're working out of one of our special event shows. With that, I didn't want to go over a lot of the information that Lars went over 2 weeks ago when we did this, but I did want to give you an update on the activity of the business licenses as of today. We have 2,382 applications in. 663 of those are residential rentals. Again, we know that from the sales tax records we had up until January when the state took them away, there were about 3,000 residential rentals. We'll talk about that later. The vacation rentals, we have 32 licensed. Now, these are the vacation rentals that are occurring in residentially zoned areas. If they occur in a commercial zoned area or if they're in a residential area with the owner living on premises, they are not required to get a vacation rental license per the license that the council adopted. Structured sober living, we have 21 that have applied. We have another 25 that are owned by one entity that we are working with to get those in the next few weeks. We also have 19 letters. The compliance period basically ended the 1st of March, so now we're starting our recontacting everybody to get licensed. We sent out 19 follow-up letters on those, and we should be hearing back on those in the next few weeks. There was also talk, I just wanted to touch on this, when the business license was going on about a directory or an online directory, and we are working with our IT department to put something like that together. We have an example of what that may look like. Again, we have limited information that is available on the business license because we intentionally, and per council's direction, kept the license application brief as we could, getting the information we needed to help with the compliance in the other areas of the city. So this is kind of the information we would be looking at to put on an online directory that people could go out and look at. Obviously, business name, phone number, the address, the NAICS code, which gives the general class of the retailer that they're in. And then there's a description field that the taxpayer or the business owner writes a little explanation of what they do in it. And that is the areas that we would be looking to include in that directory. Some businesses up there you might recognize. But. So with that recap, the item on the agenda today is to look at long-term rentals. And again, when we looked at this last spring, the point of including long-term residential rentals in the business license was in relation to our sober living compliance and tracking type of things. Subsequent to the business license, though, a sober living license was adopted by council as well as a vacation rental license. So as we started implementing the business license, as we discussed 2 weeks ago, a lot of complaints from the public in the long-term residential area. You know, it's more of an investment as opposed to a actual operating business. And what's the city going to use this for? So we looked at the need for it with these other licenses that have been implemented, and we felt that the compliance need really wasn't that helpful. So that's why we brought the exclusion back to council for consideration, is to exclude these, which would allow staff to focus more on the compliance of the other more prominent businesses that are more operational and concerned to keep track of. So with that, we can go into more details on the actual ordinance or just go to questions since we did discuss it 2 weeks ago.
Councilwoman Orr.
Yes. Well, I just want to say again, we mentioned state overreach earlier, and I think that this is a result of some of the state overreach that we've had with regard to the TPT. We knew when we passed this that we would need to come back and reconsider, look if there were issues. We talked about it in the beginning. It didn't take long until we started getting a few calls and we realized, no, this is maybe not the best idea on this particular with regard to long-term rentals. So I'm pleased that we are following through and saying we're going to look at this. And Mark, I'm really pleased to hear about the registry. And as finite as we can get that, I think it'll be better for the people that have business license and then better for those of us who would like to do business with people that are doing business. So thank you for agreeing for that.
Councilman Shiska.
You know, Mark, a key reason why I would like a directory is for economic development. I'd like companies out of this state and out of this area to be able to look at Prescott and see exactly what's here. You know, I think that you talked about 10,000 businesses originally, unless I misunderstood. And the Chamber of Commerce has 800 members. So we probably could benefit the Chamber of Commerce by publishing a directory of all of the possible members that they could have. But, you know, I think that the directory is a key driver for me in this whole thing. So thank you.
Sure. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Mark, I would agree with you that the conceptual idea of bringing forward the business license once again was, in my humbled opinion, a reaction to the proliferation of certain other kinds of businesses taking place in town. By cause and effect, it's still my humbled opinion we didn't approach that topic correctly. And there are certain things, and we have since approached it with rules, standards for medical delivery services, et cetera, in the city of Prescott, acknowledging the fact that drug addiction and alcoholism, et cetera, is now classified as a disability. But if you're going to treat that in the city of Prescott, you got to do it by a standard, not just willy-nilly free-for-all. And we've done that differently. That is not a good reason to create exemptions for different classifications of business. Either you exempt them all, because, you know, I honestly think that the reason for the business license was flawed, and I think the reason for exemptions is flawed. If, you know, we don't exempt people from doing the speed limit. We pass one speed limit and everybody obeys it. There's certain things that we do, and if for some reason you need to have a special consideration for, oh, I don't know, I can't think of something that would be analytical on those two topics, but the fact of the matter still remains, I don't support exemptions. I didn't support the business license. If you're going to have a business license, I believe you treat everybody equally, or you don't treat any of them at all. And that's where I'm at. It has nothing to do, absolutely nothing to do with disregard for the folks who've invested a lot of money in this community in vacation rentals or in long-term rentals or anything else. I appreciate them being here. I appreciate the amount of money they bring here in tax, the amount of money they create in bed tax, the amount of money they create in a lot of different things. I think it's an overreach to charge them for permission to do it. I think they have an inalienable right to be here in the city. It's not a privilege, it's a right. And as long as they pay their bills, I don't think that we should be charging somebody else to cover the cost of them doing their business. And I don't want to be offensive to you guys, okay, because that's not my point. I don't need the city to market my business. I market my business on my own. And I really think, as Councilman Shiska down here was talking about with the chamber, I advertise with the chamber. The chamber is part of my marketing strategy. Here again, I don't necessarily think that the city needs to do it for me. So just sharing that with you.
Councilman Blair.
Well, I said all along when this came up, I don't know, about 16 years ago, that I would never support a business license for the fact that I wanted to know what I got out of it. Why would you ever charge somebody something and receive nothing back? Whether you're advertising on the radio or whether you're going to buy something at Shiska's store, you don't go in there and think you're not going to get something for what you pay for. And I certainly don't think it's righteous for the city to charge somebody a business license fee or tax, however you want to put it, unless I'm getting something back for it. I already pay the TPT, I pass it on to the city, I do all the things that are demanded out of me. And I said all along, I would not support it unless there was a registry for business. Because at that point in time, I feel like I'm getting something back for the money you're asking me to put in. So if there is a registry, and it's available on the website so people can find you and locate, I understand the value of people wanting to bring their businesses into the community and be able to look and see how many lawyers, doctors, dentists, those types of things that are available in this community. So I'll support it now because I asked early on, and I think your statement early on is we don't have the ability to do this. So now, if you found the ability to do that, then I would change my mind to a yes vote.
We are working on it with the web department.
Okay. I just think that the whole idea behind somebody standing up and saying, and if I'm moving in here, I want to know how many sober living homes are here. Yeah. If I'm going to buy a house of $500,000 or whatever the case may be, I'm not sure I want to move in this community if I have a bunch of sober living homes. That may enter into my logic as well. But I want to be able to see that if I go to the city's website and know who's doing business in the city. So by getting something from my money, I would support that.
Councilwoman Wilcox.
Well, it sounds to me like we're debating the whole question of having the business license in the first place, which the council adopted a year ago, right? Almost a year ago?
Last May, yes.
But this amendment is creating one exemption to the business license.
Correct.
So if we don't approve this amendment, the original ordinance stands as it is.
Correct.
Right? Okay, I just want everyone to be clear on that, because I think there may have been some confusion about it last time.
And I think, one of the things I asked early on was to make sure that we were trying to set ourselves up for our business license, just like everybody else around us, PV, Gino, and the county. And as I understand, these changes are going to bring us in line with the other municipalities in the county in the way they handle their business license. Is that correct?
That is correct. And the reason we were different in the beginning is we were looking at it more for the vacation rental and the sober living enforcement with legal. But subsequent to that, of course, we had those other two licenses adopted.
Okay. And also, I think you told me in the past that one of the things you're concerned about is when we get the registry from the state of who they're collecting TPT from, this business license will give us the ability to do a compare and make sure that they're picking up everybody that we know or feel should be paying TPT. Is that correct?
Yeah, and it's not just whether they're paying it or not, but whether the state is remitting it correctly. I mean, because they being a new business go on and they identify the locations that they're collecting in, and it's a little confusing on the Department of Revenue website. So this will allow us to make sure that those things are happening, which, again, without it, we're limited to the information we get from the Department of Revenue, and we're very limited as to what we can do with it.
And we know that the Department of Revenue has made mistakes in the past.
One or two,
and I think there were
yes.
some cities where they actually shorted them millions of dollars in TPT, and it took quite a while to turn that around.
Yes, a common problem is the Prescott and Prescott Valley. We've had situations where we've gotten revenue from their businesses for a while, and until that was caught by the town, and then it was fixed.
And I agree with Councilwoman Orr that when you start something like this, there might be a need to change it. I mean, we've got a number of ordinances that we're looking at right now that might have to have minor changes to them. So we anticipated this, and I can tell you, and I'm sure you're aware of it, and I know Lars is aware of it, that this is probably the one area that we've received the most complaints, and I think it deserves to have some remediation. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you very much. Here again, Mark, appreciate your year after year direction on this. But TPT is not collected by everybody doing business in the city. But everybody doing business in the city puts a level of demand on the services that are supplied in the city, period. Police, fire, roads, other infrastructure that's in town. While I realize that we charge use fees on your water, on your sewer, on your trash pickup, etc., it still has an impact because people have to travel here to do this, or people have to take into consideration that the garbage trucks use the roads, etc., to pick up their garbage when they're a dentist or they're a lawyer or whatever the case would be. So here again, no exemptions, or exempt everybody and do it differently. That's sort of where I'm at on this. And we came up with some pretty good direction when we chose, for example, a number of years ago against another tax that I didn't approve of, that being the alarm ordinance, where originally it started off to tax everybody for permission to own an alarm in the city. And eventually it evolved around, if you have an alarm in the city and you have an unauthorized disarmament of your alarm, at that point, because you put a cost on the city, you put a demand on the police department. Of course, we exempted the fire department. I don't understand why, but we did. At that point, you did have to register it, and you did have to pay. So what you weren't doing is you weren't putting out a blanket penalty on everybody in the city who chose to protect their business or their home or their employees or whatever by owning an alarm. which is a private property that they have a right, assured to protect themselves or their business or their, home or whatever the case would be. So, but we worked through that process. It took a while. But what we didn't do is we just didn't blanket charge everybody because you had a handful of offenders. And we took from something that went from, I think, 2,300 down to less than 2,300. Okay? So that's no exemptions from my perspective. Okay?
Any other questions, comments from the council? Any from the public? Come on down.
Hello, my name is Daniel Matson. I live here in Prescott, and I happen to be a renter still, even though I'm trying to talk the landlord into selling the place to me. I really don't see that the purpose for the registry. I don't see that it really applies to long-term rentals the way it does to other businesses. And not to mention, we have a problem with scams going online where people will put out for rent properties that are not actually theirs. I think you'd be offering them a gold mine of information that they could mine to use for further scams. So you're putting a burden on somebody who, my landlord's been renting to me for 8 years. Why ask him to pay any amount per year to register his place? I don't see that that's really of any use to anybody. All it's going to do is encourage him to increase my rent, and that, rents in this city are too high to begin with. If I'm a nefarious person looking to engage in this scam, you're just making it easier on me. I can just go to the City of Prescott website and find all these places that are for rent, and then when I put my fake ad out, it's got an address and everything that relates to somebody can go by there and check, and yes, that's a rental property. I don't really see that the burden and the risk to security is worth it. I think an exemption in this case would be appropriate. And again, originally wanting to register all the sober living residences and the vacation residences, that's been covered. So we no longer have that justification to put the burden on the long-term rentals. So I personally would support an exclusion in this case. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Mayor, Council, my name is Michael Yarns. I'm the owner of Rent Right Management Solutions. I represent 138 owners with 400 units here in the city of Prescott. They are very upset about this. As you can imagine, I've talked to a lot of you. I would ask you to do the exemption if you were to publish a list with my owners' names and contact information. I can guarantee you're going to receive a lot more phone calls. They're going to be very upset. I completely agree with Councilman Blair. I do not see what we get for this. It's $35 per unit. I know there's some distinction based on triplex or less, but basically $35 per unit. I have some owners with 40 units. They want to know what they get. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, did you want to say something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here again, I don't disagree with you. You don't get anything any more than most of us do for permission to be here. However, because I do have a business here, my clients use the roads to come occupy my business, come do things in my business, etc. So I do put a demand on services. If we're going to exempt one, exempt them all. That's my argument. My argument isn't to charge everybody so we can exempt a few, nor is it to unjustly charge people to create income. I agree with Blair down here to some degree too. He collects TPT. He pays higher property rates or taxes because it's commercial. He has employees. He creates jobs. We all do. We're all in it together. Now, either we're going to have a business license or we're not. But what you don't do is start creating exemptions. That's what we just heard that's offensive down in Phoenix.
Councilwoman Orr.
Thank you. I would just like to thank Michael for working with the office, because I know you came in often, and Lars, I think you're in your staff of 2, Mark, you've done a great job in working through this issue. So I think we have a nice solution I think it's, you just look at what was on front page of the paper this week, sober living homes down from 200 to 80. I think this had a small impact, maybe not even small, but certainly was part of the reason we were able just to identify who was actually doing business in Prescott. So I think this has been long overdue, but I really do appreciate Michael and Rent Right and working with his customers and with our city staff. So thank you.
Well, I know Lars will appreciate me not giving him any more emails. So. Any other public comment? Okay, do I have a motion?
Mayor, I move adoption of ordinance number 5025-1563.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion, second vote, please.
Mayor Over. Passes 6-1. Mayor Pro Tem Lemerson dissenting.
Okay, last item.
Item D, approval of an agreement with POCO for the purpose of conducting online citizen surveys for a period of 1 year in the amount not to exceed $6,000, city contract number 2017-276.
Mayor and Council, John Heine, Communications Office, Community Outreach Manager. It's my first presentation to Council in my new position.
Well, welcome aboard.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Want to discuss with you today a possible contract with a company called POCO. They're an online polling and survey solution. I know that there have been many questions about this in the recent days since this was put on the agenda, so I have a brief few bullet points to review just to try to answer some of those questions. Pretty much right after I started, I was asked to research potential polling solutions for the opportunities with PSPRS and the ballot question. This was before the ballot question was actually posed. Did some research, looked at some more professional type of polling companies, looking at solutions in the range of $20,000 to $30,000, 12 weeks worth of work. So dug a little deeper and looked for some other options that would help us get some feedback. POCO was brought to my attention early last month. Definitely lower cost than a full public scale poll. Here's some of the highlights and maybe hopefully answering some of the questions that have been brought up about it. This is an online polling service. It's different than others that are out there in the field in the following ways. They do provide professional assistance with the formation of the questions. I was told today that they have a PhD in survey science methodology who can help us ask questions that are appropriate. They also have a vetting process. If you are doing something and you want to hear just from Prescott residents, they are able to take the responses and confirm that they are Prescott residents using voter information. So they have that ability as well. They do provide assistance with marketing and promotion as well. Since this is an online survey, you have to compel people to get online and take the survey. So part of the service they provide would be helping us get the word out about the poll and getting it in front of folks. Another question that was asked was about accessibility. So if you don't happen to have a computer or a laptop at home, how can you take this poll? The answer I was given was that it is a site that also works very well on smartphones and tablets, so that increases. There's actually more people using social or using the mobile applications now than there are online, so this does increase the ability to use that. Plus the ability, of course, to go to a public library or somewhere where there's public access to the internet to be able to take this poll. This is a one-year agreement. It's basically paid on a monthly basis. It's unlimited use, which means if we decide to do 10 polls a month, wouldn't recommend that, but if we did, we could, we'd have that ability. One of the things we talked about too was what are some other potential uses other than asking the voters about polling questions. So you could talk about any of the various initiatives that the city's doing. You could ask about customer service. You can get customer feedback on any number of things that the city's doing. So I think there might be some value in that. If it is used for a ballot, it could be used to determine gaps in public information or knowledge. What do people know about the issue right now? How much do they know? What don't they know? So you could ask questions that help the city understand where the gaps in information are and help respond and give voters information that they could use to make an educated, informed decision. Once the ballot is over, the tool could be used to determine what services are important to the public. So depending on what happens with the vote, we could help poll the public and find out what their feedback would be. Someone asked, actually, I heard it on a radio show today. Someone said, well, why not SurveyMonkey or one of the free services that are out there? Nothing is free. If you take a SurveyMonkey poll, what they turn around to do is sell your information to somebody else. That's how you get on mailing lists. So this is private, proprietary information that will be kept with the city. It will not be sold. So that's probably one of the key differentiators, with one of the free polling. So that's all the information I have. Hopefully that answered some questions that are out there.
Councilman Lozelle.
Thank you, Mayor. Michael, are you on board with this?
I think it's a good tool to have in our toolbox for gauging citizens' perspectives and opinions on a variety of subjects. If it was just specifically for the .75, I would probably not be, but I think having it for a year to gauge citizens and feel the pulse of the community on a number of subjects and services we provide, it could be valuable.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Wilcox.
Well, I would like to see this access to this poll be as broad as possible. Not just the downtown Prescott Library computer access, but computer terminals, whatever we call them now, in the 3 educational institutions, maybe the high school, the hospital, places where people go. Maybe even some of the supermarkets would be willing to have a computer there at the customer service desk where someone could actually watch the computer, make sure it's not walking away with little legs. But give a broader section of our populace the opportunity to say something. If they have to trek down to the library because they don't have a computer, it may not ever happen. And I think it's a good idea for a lot of different reasons to get people's opinions about how what their priorities are on our city services, how well we're doing. But in particular, with respect to the PSPRS question, there are a lot of misperceptions out there, and we're getting anecdotes through letters to the editor and conversations with individuals. This kind of poll, I think, would help give us a more systematic understanding of how to address those misperceptions when we're developing our information pamphlet to citizens. So I'm supporting it.
Councilman Chiska.
Thanks, Mayor. I have to tell you, John, originally I thought, what in the heck are we doing? And the first thing I thought of, particularly with the .75, was, okay, you have to go to the Weather Channel to see if it's raining 5 minutes after you looked out the window and saw that it was raining. And so that's my big hang-up. Help me out here because, Gene did a partial job of helping me out with understanding why we would want to do this, but can you expand on that?
Sure. Just expanding on just what Councilwoman Wilcox said is there are, in a situation like this, it's a complex subject, and there are a lot of misperceptions, or frankly, you might discover that people have no knowledge of, I would be surprised, but that they might have no or very little knowledge of the subject. If you can determine that from a survey or some sort of feedback mechanism, then you can tailor your communications to meet where those gaps are of knowledge and education and understanding.
So what kind of opportunities are there for abuse of this system?
That's a good question. There's always the opportunity, but I would say I've worked with different polling methodology, from phone calls to on-street surveys. There's always an opportunity for abuse, but this is more of a contained system than some of the other online type of services. And as part of their scope of work, they're going to make sure that we're only looking at data from residents using the state's voter information. So I think it definitely is tight, but there's always opportunity.
So are these residents randomly picked?
No, they would have to select the goal would be to get the word out to every single Prescott resident and get them to fill it out. So we're going to use a campaign, almost a marketing campaign, to get them to go online and take that survey. And that's part of the assistance that company provides.
Don't you think that people who are most, let's say, adamant about the subject are going to be the ones who go on to the survey?
That's always a possibility. The goal is to get what they call a statistically significant number of responses. And what I'm told in this case, even if we were paying the $30,000 for the phone polls, that was going to be 400 to 800 responses. So I think if you're at that level, the other thing is that they do provide trend analysis, so you can look and see if there are some trends or something that looks like it's askew, they will point that out.
Thank you.
Councilman Shiska, I think the other risk from the perspective of the city is to put too much validity in the results or to overemphasize what you find. I think you have to, if you're going to use it properly, it's a snapshot and it's somewhat in focus, but not totally in focus. And understand there's limitations with doing something like this. Is it better than no data? Yeah. Is it perfect data? There's no way. And I think that whatever the results are, specifically with this issue or any city issue, it has to be viewed in that kind of context. And if it can't be viewed in that context, or you don't think that that's likely, then I wouldn't support it. But if you think it can be, and it's a tool in the toolbox that could help us, then I would.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
You made it clear as mud for me.
And that's why I'm a bureaucrat.
Councilwoman Orr.
Yes, John, thank you and welcome to the city of Prescott. We're really happy and have enjoyed working with you over the last few weeks. In 4.5 months, we have one of the biggest issues facing this city, and that is to pass our 0.75% dedicated sales tax to begin to pay down our unfunded liability. I think this has taken us off focus. What we need to spend our time with, I believe, is getting out there and talking to people, educating folks, giving them the facts. We don't have to find, I would really disagree with any of this having anything to do with PSPRS, because I think we're just simply going to confuse the situation even more. And down the road, might this be something that would be, if we want information about customer service or we want information about facilities or whatever, maybe this might be, because I know we've talked about this up here. But I will tell you, I'm a no vote on this, because I really think this council, the most important thing we can do right now is to get out there, talk to our citizens, let everybody know how this is so important for us to pass the 0.75% dedicated tax to sunset in 10 years. Everything else, in my book, is off my plate until we get that done. So.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. John, thanks for muddying the water, as Shiska says. I'm not one of those folks that buy in real quick to anything that could be considered exclusionary. And while technology is really important to some folks, it doesn't mean squat to others. And I will tell you, I think if you limit your polling exercise to a single group of people, very similar to exemptions on anything else, what you've done is you've limited your equal treatment to everybody that's in the city. And very similar to what Billy was saying here, our focus at this point is figuring out a way to bring in balance our unfunded liability of our PSPRS issue. If we were using multimedia to do our polling, if we were using, and I don't think we should be polling on the 0.75. I think that shouldn't be part of this. To be very candid, are there reasons to have this tool, as city manager down here said, in the toolbox? Absolutely. Is this a $6,000 expenditure at a very opportune time? Yeah, it probably is. But if you could demonstrate a little more succinctly on what other, not the PSPRS 0.75 deal, but some of the other things that we need to know with regards to certain issues in the community that are going on. I don't want to go back over the same ground we just went over. Anybody that does business in this community uses all the services. All right? Our we all pass on the costs to our customers, our clientele, whether they're a renter or whether they're a retail merchant, whether they're somebody who's getting their tooth pulled, or whether it's somebody using a lawyer. All these costs get passed on to the ultimate consumer. That's what happens in a free market, okay? I'm not a big one that likes to try and manipulate a free market. I like allowing the free market to. Now, very similar to what Councilman Blair said earlier, if I see a value for the dollar, I can be, persuaded to sell or spend the $6,000. I don't see the value for the dollar at this time, very similar to what Billy said. At this time, I see leaving the $6,000 alone and going after why we need to do what we need to do to see if we can bring into focus our PSPRS liability.
Councilman Blair.
I love listening to this. It's all good stuff. From my perspective, it's pretty simple. We have an opportunity to be more focused than going out on computers and making them accessible to everybody in this community. And that's not to put down Gene's idea, but usually when somebody's compassionate about something, you'll find 2 or 3 people at that same computer terminal lead going in there stating their opinion. We have the ability as a city of Prescott to know we have between 23,000 and 25,000 water bills. We know those are our customers. We know those are our people. That's the focus group we need to work on. We need to leave the 0.75% away out of this. It's already on the ballot. It's already been decided. From my standpoint, $6,000 would be better spent somewhere else.
Well, I think it's a great way to communicate with the public, number one, and to get public input. We've had people come up to this mic and talk about transparency and trying to understand what's going on and trying to make us hear their opinions. And, I think that this is a valuable opportunity. We should not limit learning what the public's opinion is on various issues that are facing the city. And, again, anything that promotes transparency of the issues for us and for the public, I think it's a good idea, so I'll vote yes on this. If there's no other, I got one more comment from.
Just one more. I remembered the attempt to drive people into these chambers, changing our time of duty here.
Whose idea was that?
That was my idea. And I will say, based upon the tax that we're doing, based upon eliminating the apartment rentals, there's changes in everybody's mindset and everything we think about. But we made that change, and we made a commitment to the community that we'd see how many more people, how many more butts we could get out here. And we didn't get any more butts out here. And I think we're pretty transparent in everything we do. I'm just more concerned about the information we receive is quality information. And when you leave it open to computer terminals anywhere for anybody that's passionate about a certain issue, you skewed the issue already. If you send out messages through our water bill to our customers, I talk to people all the time and say, hey, are you a voter in the city of Prescott? You bet. Where do you live? Williams Valley Road. Okay, I understand that. They want to be part of the city of Prescott, but yet they still want to feel like they're a voter in the city. And I think if we're focused on the people that really do need our services, drive our roads, that have water, sewer, and issues, police and fire, those are the people in our water and our sewer bills, period.
Well, one thing I'll say is, we send out a lot of things in water bills and things like that. And when it requires somebody to have to call in, write in, do something like that, where they can just go on and hit it on a smartphone or a computer, sometimes I think we'll get a lot more responses. We had pretty good responses from the online survey that Embry-Riddle did on the airport. We got about 800 responses, and I think it was a smart way to go to do it on the internet. Councilwoman Orr.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to respond to your remark about transparency. I'm all for transparency. I just don't believe, I think we need to stay on message and that we need to go face to face as often as we can with our citizens. Listen, we get a lot of feedback from people about what they're thinking. So I believe that will tell us more than a survey. Now, might this be a tool down the road for a different circumstance? Possibly. Certainly, you've done a lot of research, John, on different instruments that are out there, and everything was very expensive, took lots of time. So down the road, this might be something that we might consider at this point in time, and certainly for this issue. I really think it would be a mistake because I think there's a lot of mixed messages out there. We need to get the facts out and speak to our folks as much as we can, one-on-one, face-to-face, or maybe through the phone.
I like the idea of going out there and having this tool, but not for the ballot measure. We've already decided that.
That's right.
And so if we want to vote on it without it being about the ballot measure, I would support the 6. But I'm not going to support the 6 based upon all the misinformation that's out there. Because people don't understand it. And no matter whether you put it on your little polling thing, they're still not going to understand it.
We need to educate.
Well, City Manager, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, again, I think it's a valuable tool. I do think if it's used improperly or it becomes the end-all be-all, it would be a misuse of what is a single tool. Could it help you frame the dialogue on the .75? Possibly. Could it give you a little bit of a feel of the pulse of the folks in the community? Possibly. I just think I wouldn't want it to be all the eggs in the basket because it's not. It is a flawed instrument. It's not completely statistically. What's the word?
Significant.
Yeah, that's probably the word.
Yeah.
Or unbiased.
Accurate.
But I think it could help. But again, this is just an idea and it's a tool. And if you want to use the tool, use it. And if you don't, that's okay too.
Okay, any other comments from the council? Any from the public?
Yeah, I'm Daniel Matson. I already told you about that. I went to school for systems analysis and programming. I do understand a bit about statistics and polling and all that. I can see where this tool might have some value, but I'm wondering, is there the possibility of a shorter term tryout? That's just one question that came to mind. Does it have to start as a one-year contract? But more importantly, I think a lot of the polling you could do with the IT department just putting out a question on the city's website and say, email this for, you've got a domain. Can't you throw in an extra email address to have people poll a certain question? And that could be done in-house for a lot less money. It may not be as sophisticated. It may not come with the marketing attached to it and all that. But that's just another thought that I don't know has really been pursued. But as far as right at this point, when people look at the paper tomorrow to see what happened at this council meeting, they're going to couple this with the PSPRS. And they're going to say, well, they had $6,000 to throw away on this, then they don't need my 0.75. I think it needs to be turned down right now for that reason, if no other, because there's lots of people out there who are just looking for an excuse to say, well, they must not need the money because they're throwing away $6,000 here for a year of survey to find out what's going on in the next few weeks. I think it may be a useful tool in the future. I'd rather get a better idea of what other uses it would be put to. And as I say, tomorrow when people ask whether the council threw away $6,000 to find out information about PSPRS, I think you're going to have a lot of people turn the wrong way on this based on, you're spending money you don't need to spend. So I would suggest that this could be brought up at a later date with a little bit more information about how it could be used on other subjects. But I'd like to see it turned down today. Thank you. Or tabled.
Next.
Mayor, City Council people. My name is Ross Bassoni, and I live in Prescott here. And I've been listening to this thing here. First of all, polls are a waste of time. If polls were really good, we would have Hillary as the president, And so, in my opinion, the only thing a poll is good for is if you go to True Value Hardware, buy one, go fishing. Polls are stupid, And you talk about tools. City manager here said it's a flawed tool. I was in construction for over 40 years. And if you got a saw in your toolbox and it's not sharp, it's not worth anything. So why even have the tool in your toolbox? And, you know, $6,000. If you got $6,000 to throw away, I think you could give it to the school district. They would put it to better use. And another, this is my opinion, whether it's the federal government or local governments, they always seem to not have enough money to take care of what's really important. But they always have enough money to throw around and waste. And that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mayor, Council, my name is Sandra Smith. I'm at 701 White Spar in Prescott. I agree that the PSPRS should not be involved in this. I do have questions about how you would even contact the voters and people in Prescott.
Well, yeah, so it's a survey that we would have to ask you to participate in.
Yeah, but how would you reach the people?
Right, so you do a marketing campaign. You advertisements in the newspaper, send information out. You could do the radio PSA. Some of the other things that we use to notify people about meetings and events could be used for this as well.
Okay. Because I do use a computer. I do use a smartphone, like a lot of people. But I don't read the newspaper. I don't listen to the radio stations. Mm-hmm. If you want my email, you can find it somewhere on the city web, because it's around there. I think that polling has a place, but you have to be very careful with your questions. Because if a question can be worded in such a way that somebody would look at it and say, oh yeah, that sounds good, when really what is being asked, they would very much oppose if they understood what was really being asked, what was at the root of it. So I'm a little wary about using that, especially with anything as important as PSPRS. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Mayor and Council, my name is Phil Good, 3022 South Park. I don't think this is really a PSPRS issue. It's more of an essential services issue. The city is in and will continue to be in a very, very difficult, challenging fiscal environment for the years to come. So every issue like this, even though it's a trivial amount, if you call $6,000 trivial, but we've seen many other issues come before the council over the past couple of years, 50,000 here, 55,000 there, 60,000. Before you know it, you're talking about some real money. But the question should be, is this an essential service? That's going to be the question you're going to be asked many, many times now and in the future as PSPRS liability and actuarial bills continue to mount. So not only is it essential, is it really essential? And when these things come up, you got to say no. You have to have the will to manage through this next few years. Hopefully we'll get some relief from the state, but in the meantime, whether PSPRS passes or not, these issues are going to continue to come back. And to have any ability to convince the voters that you're serious about managing this tax and putting it where it needs to be, then these side issues have to be denied. And with that, I think you might have a chance to convince the voters that you're serious and those tax dollars are going to go where they're intended. So is polling valuable? I think it can be if it's done correctly, but this is a luxury we can't afford. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. I guess that's it. Any other questions, comments from the council? If not, do I have a motion?
Mayor, I move to approve city contract number 2017-276.
Do I have a second?
Oh, second? No, wait. Can I second and still vote no? Okay, then I second. Just want to make sure. I know I've done that before, but I just want to make sure.
Okay, I got a motion. Second vote, please.
Motion fails 2-5.
Okay, I always like to end with a Founding Fathers quote. This is from Thomas Jefferson. It is error alone which needs the support of government. Truth can stand by itself. Thank you for coming.